I'm an engineer. You got to do this. You got to make sure things are right. Sam, I'm gonna give you something that you need to know. All right, this is real important. Measure twice, cut once.
What about the fluid coming out, Doug? What about that?
Once I got down.
Welcome to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoatings. On this episode of Sam's Garage, Sam and Kevin Ford fabricate a custom battery mount and switch for their Jeep rock crawler. Then Sam and Doug Harris upgrade the rear suspension of the Alpha 1 GTO with new adjustable coilover springs. Sam upgrades a Polaris RZR XP with the Hypertech Max Energy Spectrum, plus a few extra accessories. Finally, Joe DuPont takes us on a trip through the NHOU facilities while discussing their plans to franchise. Sam and Kevin work on fabricating a custom battery tray and mount for the Jeep rock crawler. In addition, they add a battery cutoff switch for safety and long-term storage.
Today we're going to be installing a battery cutoff switch. Now this is something that's required if you're building a drag car. You can also use it for a classic car if you don't drive it very often and you're storing the vehicle. Now this is very important that you guys do not interrupt the ground circuit on this switch. You always want to interrupt the power circuit on a switch like this because the alternator is always running current due to the regulator being activated. And when you're running a switch like this, if you physically turn it off, you want the car to shut down. And the only way it'll shut down is if the power wire to the alternator is on the side that's going to the battery. So that when you cut off the switch, the power is cut off to the regulator and the alternator will actually shut off. Because if you remember back in the day, people would want to keep the memory on the car and they would remove the two terminals off the battery, keep the car running. That's very bad for the alternator.
Yeah, and there's another thing that people forget, that all power goes to ground. So it's a dangerous side, but you want to cut that hot side off because for my personal experience, I had a Blazer. I had a hot cable go into the set of headers that I had. I'm driving down the road, it's smoking. I pull over, I can see what the problem is. I can't grab it. It's just getting more and more red until it blew the terminals off on the battery and it exploded the top.
Absolutely, because short circuit like that is going to drain the battery. What you have to do there is cut off a cable, and you didn't have anything with me. And you know what this does is, if you're the driver in a car, this is usually on the outside of the car. If you get into a trouble, a crew member is going to come and shut off the car. But what if you're at the end of the track and the crew member is far away from you? We got remote activation from Lokar to where you guys have the lever on the inside that can shut off the power to the car just in case the crew's not there.
And you still have the option of hooking up a rod to go back to the back of your car. You know, this was born and bred in the drag world. My dad and my brother, they're heavy into it, so we get a lot of cool products like that just transfer over to other stuff like four-wheel drives, low riders, street rods, any of that stuff.
Absolutely. And if you guys have a classic and you interrupt ground, if you have a component like a radio that's got a ground to the chassis and not in the harness, you're going to have that radio stay on. You can have a short circuit to ground, and that's going to keep your battery running, which will drain it, and this will make it not work at all.
Right, this is going to work great. We can mount this bracket. It's a universal bracket we can put on the floor next to our shifter. We can mount our switch under the hood. We'll have a convenient spot to turn it off if we're working on it and we see any issues, like I had in my Blazer.
Absolutely. Let's grab some tools and get this thing installed. And the cable's gonna go right through here, and it's a good thing that we didn't install this switch panel. This is where the mock-up process is so important, because had we bolted this down, we would have had holes there we didn't want. This cable's gonna go right through there, so now we have to think of somewhere else to put the switch panel.
Right, and since this is a universal bracket, let's go ahead and use this vertical slot that we've got so that we can, somewhere in the middle here, and then we'll give ourselves a little bit of adjustability.
Okay, we're gonna be installing the bracket right here on top of the bracket that Matt made on the battery. We're gonna put a couple of tacks in place. We're not gonna fully weld it in yet because we don't know if we're gonna keep it here. We've got a fuse underneath it we have to make sure to clearance, and we have the fender liner here that we have to make sure to clearance. Now, there is gonna be zinc on this bracket. You wanna make sure to scrape off the zinc before you do any welding, because those gases will be harmful.
Sam, check this out. I got the cable hooked up, got the lever mounted to the bracket, and instead of pulling to turn on, we're gonna push to turn on. It gets out of the way of the shifter. That way, if we're in here and we're slapping around, we don't actually cut the power off.
That is a very good point. We got the switch hooked up underneath the hood. Matt did an awesome job tacking it in place, but I think it can actually stay there permanently. It is away from the fuse, the battery, and the fender liner. Now, I can't tell you guys how many times I got into my race car and forgot to turn it on. Have to get back out and go out and turn it back on. Matt did a great job tacking in the bracket. I think we're gonna let it live there because it's got plenty of clearance around the fender liner, the fuse, and the battery. This is very cool. I wish I had one of these when I was racing 15 years ago, but I get to install one on my Cadillac.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. Sam and Doug get to work on the rear suspension of the Alpha 1 GTO. At this phase in the project, they'll be installing new rear coilover springs and wheel bearings.
All right, so today we're going to be tackling the rear suspension of our GTO project. And as you can see, Doug is very uncomfortably in the car removing the rear upper strut tower covers, so it exposes our 14mm nuts. That way we can go ahead and drop the whole assembly out. We're going to install the same coilovers that you guys saw us installing up front in the rear, and then we're going to put an upgraded brake system.
Yeah, as always, Sam has the old guy climb into the tight spots. It's a good thing I'm flexible.
So what we're doing now is we're going to be installing the new bearings. Anytime you guys are doing work like this, and especially in our case where it's 41 years old, go ahead and put new bearings, new seals in. That way it's all taken care of. I got the bearing in the hole. It's already all packed up. It's in the hole pretty tight. There we go. It's all packed. You want to get a socket or something that's in the same diameter of the outside portion of the bearing so that you have something to bang on so that you can get it in. Or you can use a press. Use this.
Make sure you use a piece that only hits the outer race, not the inner race or the bearings. So make sure it's large enough, as this piece is here, where it just hits the outer race. Otherwise, you'll damage the bearing.
We've got the coilovers installed in the rear, and as you can see, we did put a couple of tacks on the sleeve to the knuckle, because what happens is that those two pieces are just on top of each other floating, and they can come apart. Now, if Doug were to drive this really hard on the racetrack and he gets three-wheel action going, that'll very easily come down and ruin your day. So we put a couple tacks in place to keep it in place.
Yeah, and that's great. And also, as we were putting the rear suspension together, the rear sway bar didn't quite fit exactly right. So we're going to be modifying the sway bar in order to get all the geometries correct. And this is real normal in this type of a build. As we're going through it, there's a lot of little tweaks that we have to do along the way. So, you know, it's been awful lot of fun, Sam, as we've been doing this. We ran into a couple little issues. We overcame them. But what a great day.
Considering this thing is over 40 years old, we're doing pretty good. Most times you'd be having broken bolts, have to get the torch out, break things off, but not really in our case. Only one time have we pulled the torch out so far.
No, the good thing about it is I always kept this car inside, so it didn't have a lot of rust onto it. Once again, we used a lot of penetrating oil. That made a difference that we pulled. We had to use a little bit of heat, so there's a lot of little things that we did in order to make this work. You know, we managed to tackle it. We didn't kill ourselves today. It was a good day today.
Well, one little hammer shot in the hand, that's not
bad.
Now, we did not reinstall the half shafts in the rear because we're going to be modifying the differential and we're going to be upgrading to 300ZX twin turbo half shafts, 90 model and later. The control arms are in place, knuckles are in place. All we got to do now is the rear brakes.
Is rear brakes, yeah. And once again, we're putting so much power down on this, we have to go through everything. We've got to go through every piece of the powertrain in order for this thing to be able to take the horsepower we're putting down.
And to be safe.
And to be safe.
Now back to more Sam's Garage. The Polaris RZR XP is already a fun off-road vehicle, but it's even more fun with the addition of a Hypertech Max Energy Spectrum. To complement the extra power, the ATV will also be receiving a few extra goodies.
Hypertech is the leader in tuner technology. They make more power per dollar than anybody else out there. Recently, they've gotten into the power sport market, like the side-by-side you see behind me. They've got a whole bunch of parts for you guys. You might want to check their website. For instance, we got extreme lower ball joints. We got 4340 upper ball joints. There is a 4-point harness that they offer with 2-inch width, pull-down straps, and pockets to be able to put stuff in. They've got limited straps to keep your suspension at bay when you get air. All right, they've even got a tire repair kit. In that kit, there's everything you need to patch your tire in the woods, along with a knife and the rubber cement, along with a tire gauge. They have a recovery kit. In that kit, they have straps, tow hook, they've got a pulley, they've got rope, and gloves. Everything you need to get yourself out of a mess in the field. Now, they've even got the Spectrum programmer for this vehicle. That's right, a programmer. This is a tuner that's going to add 42 horsepower and up to 10 pounds of torque on the turbo application. They've even got a pistol grip short shifter. This is very nice, billet aluminum. We've got a blow-off valve. Now this is going to give you that sound that you're after. There's going to bypass valve is installed on the vehicle. You take that out, you put this in, and you get that whoosh sound that everybody's after. We're going to go ahead and install these parts. Let's get started with the blow-off valve. All right, so as you can see, we have removed the bypass valve, and this basically recirculates the excess air when you snap the throttle, okay? What we just did was we put a blow-off valve on, so now it no longer recirculates air. We have to plug that connection right there, and I got a plug right here. I'm gonna put the clamp on it and simply install it. All right, now we got the blow-off valve installed. Don't forget to reconnect the vacuum line to the top of the blow-off valve, okay? We want to go on to the 4-point harness now. So when you're putting the strap around the roll cage, it's very important that you go around the roll cage, through the buckle, then go back through the buckle. It's going to be a little tight, but this ensures the seatbelt will never come off the roll cage. Now you have a nice strong connection that will never pull. Here we are installing some door panel padding for added safety and protection for both driver and passenger. When things get bumpy off-road, you're really going to appreciate this addition. It also has a cargo pocket with plenty of room to keep your phone, wallet, and essentials nice and secure. Well, as you can see, we got all of our accessories hooked up. I love the shifter. And now I've got my Spectrum hooked up. I'm gonna go ahead and program the RZR. This thing does have a lot of capabilities. You can totally customize your tune. It'll control the fan speed, the idle speed, the top speed limiter, even the tire size. This makes 42 horsepower and 9 foot-pounds of torque. I can't wait to see what the horsepower is gonna feel like on this guy.
Welcome back to Sam's Garage, presented by NH Oil Undercoating. Joe DuPont takes Sam on a tour of the NHOU facilities while welcoming new dealers and franchisees to the family. NHOU prides themselves on excellent service and transparency to their customers.
Check out this lobby. This is not something you would normally see in an automotive facility. This is more along the lines of a dealership type environment because it is, one, so clean, nice, and friendly, but but check out the open view to the facility you have where your car is being worked on. Not only that, but today, we all like to stay connected, and that means whether we're connected to the internet, Wi-Fi, our family, we like to see what's going on with our automobiles too. We're able to see it with the screen on the television, right? Because you're going to put cameras inside where you guys are doing the spraying.
Right. Stay connected or take the mystery out of it. We've always had a window in our waiting room so that the customers could actually see the service being performed on their vehicle. Unfortunately, we're in 2 separate buildings now, so what we've done now is we've installed cameras so you can sit here and actually view your vehicle being serviced from here. We like to involve the customer in the process, whatever extent possible.
That is very cool. And we're going to pretty much show you guys the process of what it's like as a customer to come in and get the service done.
So what we've done is, obviously, we try to recreate what we have here as best as possible. And we hope in the very near future to have franchises. But we understand what is critical in this whole equation, and that is proper application, okay? Best product in the world is completely worthless if it's not applied properly. So we have factory-trained applicators such as Dave. He's invested an awful lot of time in knowing how to apply the product properly. And so, Dave, what can they expect in your shop?
When they bring the vehicle in, we will assess it, and then as we start the application, we want to make sure that we provide them a high-quality application. So we're going to get in, make sure the product gets into all the nooks and crannies, again, with a high quality.
And that's where being a factory-trained applicator is so important, because you got that consistency, and you're going to be taking that consistency and hopefully franchising it.
We hope in the very near future to have franchises.
And the reason why franchises are successful is the consistency of the product. This is where all the magic occurs. This is where the spraying is. This is where all the equipment is. And this is extremely clean considering this is an automotive facility.
I want people to come in here and feel comfortable that we're going to competently take care of their vehicle.
Well, it sure looks like it just by looking at it. What do you think, Dave?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's an awesome facility, very clean, very nice.
And what we've done is, for instance, we have a oil mist filtration system here. We've gone through several of these ultimately to get to one that actually does the job. And what we do is we recapture the overspray and we reuse it, but more importantly, we stop a lot of the overspray from getting on the customer's vehicles. We also have high-pressure systems, carbide tip, specially designed to apply rust-proofing product, our product. We have systems in place that, what we're hoping to do, Dave, is when you say, I want to go the next level, and I want all the systems, and I want to be completely invested in this, we're going to have a system set up here so that it's going to be turnkey for anyone to completely become us.
Right.
You guys even take the measures of covering the cars when you're doing the oiling, so no residue or anything gets on the actual surface, the wipers, nothing like that.
We do.
That is very impressive.
I think that is important as doing a good job is doing a clean job.
Absolutely. And when you're in the showroom, checking out the cameras, watching your vehicle be worked on, it's important to see that they take such good care of your vehicle while they're applying the product. That means that the product has got just as much integrity as the service.